It was a chilly December evening, and Emma's parents announced they had to leave for an urgent business trip. Leaving her home alone for the first time, Emma, being a responsible 16-year-old, assured them she would be fine. As the clock struck midnight, Emma found herself immersed in her favorite horror movie, unaware of the chilling events about to unfold. The wind howled outside, creating an eerie atmosphere as Emma sat cuddled up on the couch. Suddenly, the power flickered and then went out completely, engulfing the house in darkness. Emma's heart raced as she fumbled for her phone, the only source of light in the pitch-black room. Just as she managed to turn on the flashlight, she heard a faint tapping on the window. Ignoring it, she tried to convince herself it was just a tree branch brushing against the glass. But the tapping grew louder, more insistent, sending shivers down her spine. With trembling hands, Emma approached the window, her flashlight casting long shadows in the empty room. As she peered outside, she saw nothing but the swaying trees and the moonlit street beyond. Just as she was about to turn away, she caught a glimpse of something, a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness. Fear gripped her as she stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. Who could be lurking outside her house in the dead of night? Gathering her courage, Emma decided to investigate further, determined to uncover the truth behind the mysterious figure creeping through the house. Emma felt as though she was being watched, every creak of the floorboards echoing in the silent night. She reached for the phone, intending to call the police, but to her horror, she realized the battery was dead. Panic set in as she realized she was completely cut off from the outside world. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, causing Emma to jump in fright. With bated breath, she tiptoed towards the source of the noise, her mind racing with terrifying possibilities. As she entered the kitchen, she froze in horror at the sight before her. Broken window, shards of glass scattered across the floor, and muddy footprints leading into the house. Terror consumed her as she realized someone had broken in, someone who was now lurking somewhere in the shadows, watching her every move. With trembling hands, Emma searched frantically for something, anything to defend herself with. But the intruder was nowhere to be seen, their presence a sinister presence looming over her like a dark cloud. Desperate to escape, Emma made a run for the front door, her heart pounding in her chest. But as she reached for the handle, she froze in horror. A chilling voice whispered in her ear, sending shivers down her spine. Leaving so soon, Emma, the fun's just begun. With a scream, Emma turned to face her tormentor, but there was no one there, only the empty darkness of the night. Tears streamed down her face as she realized she was trapped, alone with a shadowy presence that seemed to lurk around every corner. Hours passed, each minute feeling like an eternity as Emma huddled in fear, praying for the dawn to break and end her nightmare. But as the first light of dawn filtered through the window, Emma knew the horror was far from over. For as the sun rose, revealing the empty room around her, Emma realized with a sinking feeling that the nightmare had only just begun. The chilling voice whispered once more, sending a shiver down her spine. "See you soon, Emma, see you soon." When I was younger, I spent the day helping a neighbor rake leaves on his property. He was friendly with my family, so he walked me home to say hi to my parents. We walked into the house and heard my mom upstairs talking. It sounded like she was on the phone and walking around. I called for my dad, No answer. My neighbor says, "Well, it sounds like your mom is on the phone. I'll catch them another time." We say goodbye and he leaves. I go upstairs to see my mom, but I can't seem to find her or hear her anymore. I search the house and it's empty. I'm thinking, did she leave the house? While I was saying goodbye to the neighbors, somehow I call my dad's cell. My mom didn't have one and he picks right up. I ask him where he is and if he knows where Mom went. We're at the store. We've been running errands for a couple of hours. Instant goosebumps. My neighbor and I both heard footsteps upstairs and a woman's voice. No idea who or what it was, but we both heard it. I waited outside until my parents got home. My sister and I were enjoying a quiet evening downstairs, nestled on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, engrossed in a movie. The soft glow of the TV illuminated the room, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the tranquil atmosphere was shattered by the shrill ringing of my sister's phone. Startled, she reached for her phone, her brow furrowing in confusion as she glanced at the caller ID. To her shock, my number flashed across the screen. A chill ran down her spine as she turned to me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But your phone is upstairs, isn't it?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, my own sense of unease growing with each passing second. My phone had been plugged in and charging in my room for the past hour, untouched and out of reach. As we exchanged nervous glances, a sense of dread settled over us like a heavy blanket. Who or what could be calling from my number when my phone was nowhere near? With trembling hands, my sister hesitated before answering the call. The seconds stretched into eternity. She held the phone to her ear, the only sound in the room the rapid thumping of our hearts. Then a voice, a distorted whisper, barely audible over the static emanated from the phone, sending shivers down our spines. "I'm watching you," it hissed, the words dripping with malice. With a gasp, my sister ended the call, her hands shaking uncontrollably. We sat in stunned silence, the weight of those ominous words hanging in the air like a dark cloud. For the rest of the night, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense of unease lingering long after the phone call had ended. Though we tried to convince ourselves it was just a prank or a glitch in the system, the memory of that unnerving call haunted us for days to come. And as we finally retreated to bed, the darkness of the night seemed to press in around us, a constant reminder of the chilling phone call that had left us shaken to the core. Growing up, my parents used to leave me and my sisters home alone sometimes. I was around 13 or 14 years old when this happened. They always told us not to let anyone know we were alone and never to let strangers inside the house. One night, while my sisters and I were downstairs watching TV, we heard a knock at the door. It was unexpected, and it made us all feel a bit nervous. I went to the door to see who it was, but I couldn't see clearly through the peephole. We couldn't pretend we weren't home because the lights and TV were on. I opened the front door a little bit, thinking the person would be standing behind the screen door. But to my surprise, there was a man, probably in his late 20s or early 30s, standing right there. I quickly shut the door and told him to stand behind the screen door. He did what I said, and I opened the door a crack again, feeling a bit scared. The man told us a story about his car breaking down and needing to use a phone, but something didn't seem right. There was no car in sight, and he didn't want to ask for help from our neighbors who live nearby. I tried to be polite but firm, telling him I couldn't let him in the house. He got agitated and insisted that I bring the phone to the door for him to use. I knew it wasn't safe to let him inside, so I refused. He started getting angry and raised his voice, demanding to be let in. That's when I got really scared. I didn't know what to do. In a moment of panic, I told him I would go get my dad. But instead of going to get my dad, I went to his room and got his shotgun. I came back and showed it to the man, hoping it would scare him away. He started yelling and cursing at me, but eventually he left, or at least I thought he did. Later, he came back and tried to get in through another door. Our dog started barking at him, and he did something that hurt our dog. That made me really mad, so I threatened to call the police. Finally, he left for good. It was a scary experience, and I felt really stupid for not knowing what to do. But in the end, we were all safe, and that's what mattered most. Living in a loft in downtown was exciting, but sometimes strange. The entrance to my building was kinda hidden, just a door on the street between some shops. Most people didn't even notice it. Inside, there were stairs leading up to where I lived and to other apartments. Next to my place were some bars. Sometimes, drunk people would accidentally try to come in, thinking it was a bar or something. It was a bit scary, but I got used to it. One October night, I was sleeping when I suddenly heard voices in my living room. It was around 3 a.m., and I was freaked out. I have two friends who have keys to my place, but these voices didn't sound like them. And there was also this eerie violin music. I thought maybe two drunk people had broken in and were watching a movie or something. I didn't know what to do, so I just hid and hoped they'd leave. After a while, the voices and music stopped, but then I heard nothing, not even footsteps. I got really scared and grabbed a weapon from next to my bed. I slowly walked toward the living room, but it was all dark and quiet. Turns out my neighbor, who runs a film studio below my loft, was working on his entry for a Halloween contest. He was editing his scary movie and accidentally connected it to my sound system instead of his own. So the voices and music were just from his movie playing loudly in my apartment in the middle of the night. It was a big shock, but also kind of funny when I found out what happened. I was just relieved that it wasn't something dangerous. After that, I went back to bed and tried to forget the whole thing.